Hello, everybody, and welcome to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. I am your host, Jordan Crucchiola, and my co-host for today, showrunner, producer, woman about town in Hollywood, really. Right now, she is heading up the show iCarly. You might previously know her work writing and producing on shows such as Champions or Merry Happy Whatever. Ali Schouten. Did I say that correctly, first of all?
You did, but you know what? I realized this is my first opportunity. I am newly Ali Schouten-Seeks.
Ali okay.
I just got married.
We're christening it. Oh my God, congratulations.
Yeah. This is my first time doing a podcast or having a credit or anything with Schouten-Seeks.
Okay. So. Being the captain of the ship that is iCarly, how did you come to iCarly? Were you a fan of this show originally? Were you like, I gotta get on
this? So I am a little older than the iCarly generation.
Listen, who knows when you're coming into a Nick original or a DCOM, like, no judgments here.
I mean, I was familiar with the show, obviously, but then I started watching a bunch of episodes, and it was the very, very, very beginning of the pandemic. I was watching this show about this girl who has a web channel and is connecting with other kids and their talents all across the country and the world.
She really got in ground floor on that.
I know, right? And it was this total wish fulfillment. Like, can you imagine having a YouTube channel?
Yeah, wow,
like,
Carly.
You know, and then meanwhile, my life was, TikTok videos and Zoom open mics, and the show felt very relevant to me. So even though I didn't watch it as a kid, because I wasn't a kid when it was on, I felt like it was hugely current, and it just felt ripe for a revival. And I just was really excited about kind of the general space of it. And then I met Miranda Cosgrove really early in the process, and she and I really clicked. She's awesome, and she's like very into it as a producer.
Oh, excellent. Well, okay, so it's not iCarly, but it's still iconic. What characters have you brought for us to discuss today? Characters in the form of one vessel, really.
Yes, so I've brought in Kathleen Kelly and Sally Albright from You've Got Mail and When Harry Met Sally. And when I got the offer to come on this podcast, I was like, I just want to talk about those movies. I'll figure out what exactly it is. I mean, I have been called Sally Albright for my lunch orders, literally on Young and Hungry. I was given the nickname Sally Albright because my lunch orders were I like things the way I like them. I wanted the Lobster Club, but I wanted the bacon extra crispy, and I wanted it on olive bread, and I wanted no aioli, and I wanted
you were a manic pixie dream girl, Ali.
Well, no, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you said that because
okay, I'm so glad you want to engage with this. Yes.
When I watched the movies, I realized, so I saw You've Got Mail when it came out. Yeah. And I owned it on VHS, and I loved that movie, and I had the soundtrack, and I would listen to the CD of the soundtrack all the time. And I went to an all-girls school, and it was the beginning of AOL, and so I would sometimes be like emailing with the boys from the brothers school that I would do plays with, and I would model these sort of email relationships off like trying to be like Kathleen Kelly and Joe Fox.
Trying to be the shop girl.
Exactly. And I mean, really, there are such specific things in that movie that I'm like, yeah, I like ripped off that line. These teenage boys hadn't seen You've Got Mail. They didn't know.
Well, okay, so what is You've Got Mail about?
The premise of You've Got Mail, it's a remake of a movie called Shop Around the Corner, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And the premise is very late 90s. It is Meg Ryan plays Kathleen Kelly, and she is the owner of a small children's bookstore called Shop Around the Corner. And Tom Hanks plays Joe Fox, the youngest of the three Fox men, and the Fox men own Fox Books, which is like a Barnes and Nobles. Yeah. It's got like a Starbucks built in, and it's the flashy new thing that's coming to the Upper West Side. and putting all these independent bookstores out of business because it's this mega store.
Yeah.
It's so 90s, and you just realize now, like, her store would probably be back, but Amazon would have put him out of business.
Yeah, that is so... and I was watching, it was like, oh my God, this movie is so 90s. He just ordered a mochaccino non-fat.
Oh, I have so many thoughts about the coffee orders in that.
Tall, decaf, cappuccino.
Tall decaf cappuccino.
So, the thing about Kathleen Kelly is that she is kind of a manic pixie dream girl.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She has this whimsical job, and I don't know if you've seen They Came Together,
I haven't
which
seen
was a
that
send-up of rom-coms, specifically of You've Got Mail. I mean, it's like Amy Poehler's character owns a candy store where all the proceeds go to charity and everything is free.
Okay, outstanding.
Like, it's so good. Kathleen Kelly owns this adorable children's bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
She's really sweet, and like she's this sort of figure on the Upper West Side where all these other book people have heard of her, and we just hear about all these wonderful things. She has a handkerchief, and her favorite flower is a daisy because it's the friendliest flower. And she's just so cute. And Tom Hanks, meanwhile, is a businessman.
Yeah.
But when he writes emails, so they meet online, and they don't know that they're writing to each other.
Dear friend, I like to start my notes to you as if we're already in the middle of a conversation. I pretend that we're the oldest and dearest friends as opposed to what we actually are. People who don't know each other's names.
Morning, Mr. Fox.
And met in a chat room where we both claimed we'd never been before. What will NY152 say today, I wonder? I turn on my computer. I wait impatiently as it connects. I go online and my breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You've got mail. I hear nothing, not even a sound on the streets of New York, just the beat of my own heart. I have mail. From you.
They start an email correspondence and they fall in love over email, but in real life, they're these rivals. And about halfway through the movie, Tom Hanks, Joe Fox realizes who Meg Ryan, Kathleen Kelly, is. He puts it together. So for a lot of the movie, sweet little Kathleen Kelly, for the whole movie, she doesn't know who she's really talking to, but he does.
Yeah.
And he's manipulating all these situations so that she'll fall in love with them both in real life and online.
Yes.
So that at the very end, she can say the iconic line, I wanted it to be you.
I wanted it to be you.
So badly. So good. I cried. But so I took her as the model of, the manic pixie dream girl I wanted to be.
Right.
I wore mismatched socks. I did everything to be a little quirkster.
Okay.
And I didn't see When Harry Met Sally until I was in college. And
that feels like a good time to see When Harry Met Sally.
it's a great time.
I think you went actually in the right order if you were going to come at them, not linear.
This is what I have come here to say.
Okay,
this is the evolution of me. Is that I spent so long trying to be Kathleen Kelly, and when truly I needed to embrace my Sally Albright.
You're Sally Albright.
I like things the way I like them, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so in You've Got Mail, the big arc is that she learns to toughen up a little bit, I guess, and that he learns to, soften from her whimsy and sweetness, and he learns to open his heart up.
He can see the world with fresh eyes again, kind of thing.
Exactly. We have a similar story in When Harry Met Sally, which is about Meg Ryan again, who plays Sally Albright, and who's kind of a, uptight. Miss Hospital Corners is how she's referred to as one point.
Hospital Corners, yeah.
It takes her an hour and a half to order a sandwich. She's very particular, very neat, uses a calculator to calculate the tip, all of this stuff. And then in contrast, Billy Crystal plays Harry Burns, and he is really proud of his dark side.
Yeah, he's so dark.
No, you're probably one of those cheerful people who dots their eyes with little hearts. I have just as much of a dark side as the next person.
Oh, really? When I buy a new book, I always read the last page first. That way, in case I die before I finish, I know how it ends. That, my friend, is a dark side.
Now, in that movie, again, he's kind of softened by her, which is really interesting because you don't usually get the uptight character softening the man. Yeah. you don't really get that happening. Usually it's like about how she needs to relax.
Yeah.
And she relaxes a little bit, but really she doesn't have much of an arc.
Not really.
And I love that.
Yes, it's true.
It's
You're
amazing.
so right. Sally gets to pretty much stay Sally through and call him on his shit throughout the 12-year timeline of this movie.
So I love that you brought up so the premise of this movie is just, it's these two people meet when they graduate from college. And over the next 12 years, they prove and disprove his theory that's presented at the beginning of the movie that men and women can never be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
Yes.
Very heteronormative, but leaving that aside, it's a very simple premise. You're just seeing scenes in the life of these two friends and how they eventually get together. And it's, very basic rom-com stuff done just at the highest level.
Yeah, completely.
It's genius. But what I realized is that this is a woman who is she calls herself difficult at one point.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, so going back to the thing about he reads the last page of the book.
Yeah.
He proudly tells her, 22-year-old Harry proudly tells 22-year-old Sally, you don't have a dark side. I have a dark side. I read the last page of the book just in case I die. And she says, as a 22-year-old, that doesn't make you deep or anything.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're deep or anything. I mean, yes, basically I'm a happy person.
So am I.
And I don't see that there's anything wrong with that.
Of course not. You're too busy being happy. You ever think about death?
Yes.
Sure you do. A fleeting thought that drifts in and out of the transom of your mind. I spend hours. I spend days.
And you think this makes you a better person?
Look, when the shit comes down, I'm going to be prepared, and you're not. That's all I'm saying.
In the meantime, you're going to ruin your whole life waiting for it.
And he's sort of mocking her from the very beginning for her long orders about I want the pie like this, but if you don't have strawberry ice cream, then I'll have whipped cream, but only if it's real whipped cream.
Yeah, it's like a series of SAT analogies to make pie a la mode.
Exactly. And everyone's rolling their eyes. But at the very last line of the movie is the two of them talking about their wedding cake.
Fucking cake with the coconut and
it's a very beautiful coconut cake with a very rich chocolate sauce, but you have to keep it on the side because the coconut gets too soggy. And he's looking at her, and he loves this about her now.
We had a really wonderful wedding.
It really was a
It was great. We had this enormous coconut cake.
huge coconut cake with the tears, and there was this very rich chocolate sauce on the side.
Right. Because not everybody likes it on the cake because it makes it very soggy.
Particularly the coconut soaks up a lot of that stuff, so it's important to keep it on the side.
Right.
And watching him come to that place of that, and because they have the interstitials throughout when Harry met Sally of old couples talking about their origin stories and how long they've been together and how long they got together, and for the purposes of it's lovely, but also you're seeing people who are so lived in with each other over the course of decades, and they have this sort of hive mind and how they communicate about their lives. And then the very last insert we get after the New Year's kiss is Harry and Sally, and they got together and they got married 3 months later because it's already been a 12-year story for them.
Yeah, and 12 years and 3 months.
12 years and 3 months. And so then they started talking, and, it was a great wedding. We had a great cake, and it was a coconut cake. And then she starts, well, you got to have the chocolate sauce. And the chocolate sauce, and he starts completing her thought of being but you got to keep it on the side because it gets soggy, and not everybody likes that. She's like, yeah,
and
especially
he's
with the coconut.
rolling his eyes, but he's not. But he loves it, and he knows she's right. That's the thing is, and there's another scene, one of my favorite scenes is the dinner scene where they're trying to set up each other with their best friends. And he is trying to talk her up and he goes, oh, Sally's an expert orderer. Not only does she pick the best thing on the menu, but she orders it in a way even the chef didn't know how good it could be. And I just love that instead of it being and she learned to just eat the sandwich she was given. Which I feel is a lot of rom-coms. It's and the uptight woman learned that she needed to quit her job and, run across a field of flowers. And you're she did?
No, I think that is that. And watching there's a great exchange between the two of them as well, where he's just flipped out because he's had an encounter with his ex-wife Helen at this point, and he's been a dick to his friends who have just moved in together. And she goes out to sort of talk him down, and she's like, Harry, you can't just say everything you feel all of the time. At any moment you feel it. And that's such, to me, a role reversal of versus the, like, emotional woman who just can't stop expressing herself and the rational man. And she is telling him in that moment, like, you can't just be popping off all the time, saying everything that's in your head. And I think that I recently was educated on the concept, tell me if you've heard this, of born sexy yesterday. Have you heard this term?
Oh my God. I'm so excited to learn about this concept.
A dear friend of mine, we have a podcast about robot cinema and the sort of history of it, robot politics, robot queerness, robot everything. And a very common thing that you see with fembots is this notion of like the freshly created woman sexy bot who is so in awe of the man she has met who has perhaps created her or found her or something. But it extends, of course, past robots. Other examples they give are like Daryl Hannah in Splash. This character, these female characters who at times even will perhaps even walk around naked because they don't know to no shame, so their sexy, gorgeous bodies are on display for us to ogle. But it's charming and it's cute, but it's also hugely a turn on because these are adult, attractive women. And sort of a principle behind the YouTube channel Pop Culture Detective, the gentleman who runs that is the one who kind of coined this. And one of the key components of Born Sexy Yesterday is that so often with these characters, like in My Stepmother's an Alien as well, with Kim Basinger, these sort of like freshly arrived to humanity women. Quora in Tron Legacy. A key component of this is the Born Sexy Yesterday female character developing an intense attachment to our male hero, who is often the first and or only man they have ever met. And so not only is this person like their guide and steward, they are the most funny, the most interesting, the most knowledgeable, because they are the single source of humor, information, and knowledge, guidance in the entire world. And isn't there just nothing fucking better than being the only man a woman has ever experienced and being her measuring post for absolutely everything?
Yeah.
But in Harry Met Sally, you have this girl who, like, from the outset is like, you read the last page, that doesn't make you deep. Like, all that makes you is somebody who's not going to enjoy anything between now and the point that you die because you're just constantly thinking about the end. We have
she
her
says
being
that.
like,
she's like, you're going to waste your whole life just thinking about it. Yeah.
We have in her almost like despite her sort of like, there's that sprightliness when we first meet Sally, when she's in the car.
It's Meg Ryan.
Yeah, it's Meg Ryan.
Adorable.
And she's very kind of ladybird when we first meet her. Like, I want to experience things, and that's why I'm going to New York, and I'm going to be a journalist. And there's that, like, the Meg Ryan of it all, just like the presence and the sparkle and the glint. But she is not the Born Sexy Yesterday character. She is immediately informed on how this guy is bullshit. And it takes him 12 years to get on her level and be like,
yes,
no, but actually all these things about you, I love. And they're the things that have been true this whole time. And we're in this moment because I've gotten smarter.
Exactly. So 2 things that I'm thinking about as you're saying that. I hope I'll remember both of them, but I guarantee I won't. So first of all, in You've Got Mail, she runs a shop. Mm-hmm. Her love interest puts her out of business, which is framed as this like inevitable thing. Yes. Puts her out of business and then hires her her male employee to run the children's department at his store. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Steve Zahn.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not cool.
So reality bites.
Yeah. And then she winds up writing a children's book and gives him credit for getting her thinking about writing, which I'm like, huh? Why does he get credit? Like, we never saw that. Like, you're so good at writing. You should be writing. Like, we never saw that moment or anything.
Yeah.
So that's her evolution, as she like realizes like, actually it was so good. Yeah. It's good that I got put out of business. Like, whatever.
I'm so glad you taught me these hard life lessons.
Exactly. Now, Sally Albright says, I'm going to New York to go to journalism school to be a reporter. And that's going to be my life. Yeah. And it's going to be great. And then that's exactly what happens.
Yep.
She becomes a journalist and she's really good at it.
She writes for the New Yorker.
And like, that's correct. Like, she absolutely knew he's making fun of her. Like, oh, so you can write about things that happen to other people.
Yeah.
And then ultimately she's totally right and knows who she is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really another core difference between these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting is that, you know, for the unevolved,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you have this, and look, Kathleen Kelly's a great complex character.
Yeah.
But I get why I think 12-year-old me was like, that's who I want to be. And 22-year-old me was like, no, I already am this other person and I know what I want to do. And I know how I like my sandwiches. And, so that was one thing. And then the other thing, there's a great moment where Sally tells Harry, I just didn't want to sleep with you, and you had to write it off as a character flaw.
You know, the first time we met, I really didn't like you that much.
I didn't like you.
Yeah, you did. You were just so uptight then. You're much softer now.
You know, I hate that kind of remark. It sounds like a compliment, but really it's an insult.
Okay, you're still as hard as nails.
I just didn't want to sleep with you, and you had to write it off as a character flaw instead of dealing with the possibility that it might have something to do with you.
What's the statute of limitations on apologies?
10 years.
Ooh, I can just get it in under the wire.
I mean, and it's so great. She just has a read on the whole situation, like you said, when she, you know, is telling him you can't say everything you're thinking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she has, yes, the Meg Ryan innocence and cuteness and everything, but she has a real savvy and a real self-awareness. And I mean, I haven't even talked about how she spends the whole movie saying exactly what she wants.
Yeah.
She wants to be a reporter.
Such a great point.
She wants to live together but not be married until she doesn't. Until, you know, so she has a long-term boyfriend. They both say they want to live together but not be married because they want to be spontaneous. She realizes she wants a family. He says he doesn't. So they break up. You know, that every moment of the movie, she's very unashamed to say what she wants from her life, which I think another, you know, trope calling out that I love is the cool girl monologue, of course, from Gone Girl. And she's not cool girl at all.
Yeah.
Sally Albright is the anti-cool girl.
Yes.
You know, she's high maintenance, but thinks she's low maintenance, but she's called out and she's like, fuck off. You know, she says she wants a relationship. She says she wants a family. She isn't going to sleep with people if it's not making love. She's not chill at all.
She's not
zero chill.
Yep.
And I love that. I have no chill. So and look, I spent a lot of time claiming to not want a relationship to a lot of people I dated. But you know, ultimately, I think there's a lot to be learned from, you know, Kathleen Kelly, when she and her partner break up, it's completely amicable, where she goes, you don't love me. Me either. It's the easiest breakup in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, that would be the dream, but is that ever going to happen?
Right, yeah.
Equally do not love each other and
aren't even they're not even like melancholy in the moment. It's like, even if it's the most like, I don't want to hurt you, you don't want to hurt me, but you're both like, but we're both in pain. And she's just like, it's whimsical in that moment of like, we don't love each other.
And Sally initially does have an amicable breakup, but she describes seeing a family and starting to cry. I mean, that's the least cool, chill thing ever. And I love that. And just saying, like, I realized in that moment I didn't want the thing I thought I wanted. And so I changed my mind and ended this relationship. I mean, that's fantastic.
We are going to take a quick break, but we will be right back with Allie. And afterward, I will have one quick thing before I go about Mood Switch, guys. South Korean action horror, The Witch Part 2, the other one. I'm here to tell you about it to make sure that you know. Stick around.
Hello, I'm a stuffy dowager countess.
Travis?
I'm judging everybody's manners.
Oh, no.
Schmanners isn't judgy. It's about teaching you to be your best self
and be a little more confident when you enter social situations that you don't understand, and maybe also teach you a little bit about history you didn't know, or give you interesting things to talk about at parties.
Yeah, like The Secret Life of Emily Post.
Or like why wristwatches are the way that they are.
We can talk about table manners from the Victorian era.
Sure, or what it's like to attend a Regency ball.
Yeah.
You can find all that and more if you listen to Schmanners on Maximum Fun or wherever your podcasts come from, I guess.
Manners, schmanners. Get it?
A man was walking along a beach which represented his life. At his feet were two sets of footprints, his and God's. But looking back down the beach, the man could see that in the hardest parts of his life, there was only one set of footprints. So the man said to God, "Why is there only one set of footprints when times were hard? Where were you?" And God replied, "My precious child, I was in my car, listening to the Beef and Dairy Network podcast." The Beef and Dairy Network podcast is a multi-award-winning comedy podcast, and you can find it at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. I am talking with writer and showrunner Ali Schouten-Seeks. We have been talking about two characters played by the great Meg Ryan in the great heyday of the romantic comedy, and all the ways that Ali has identified with each of them as she has grown. So let's get back into it. I feel like we both grew up on Meg Ryan movies.
Totally.
The two dominant ones in my house were IQ and French Kiss.
Okay, I haven't seen those.
Oh my god, those are
my god.
Yeah, I highly recommend. It's Meg Ryan, so you're in for it. But IQ, I just have to say, IQ, she plays the granddaughter or niece of Einstein, and it's set in the 50s, and it's her and Tim Robbins, and he pretends to be a genius with the help of Einstein and his friends to like woo Einstein's niece, and then French Kiss, she goes chasing Timothy Hutton to France after he leaves her, and she ends up like in cahoots with a French Kevin Kline who's going to help her get her man back.
Fantastic.
But it just, there's such, even in both of those movies, what you don't get is the thing you get in Harry Met Sally, which is getting to watch Meg Ryan in all of that wonderful Meg Ryan brightness and shininess.
Yeah.
Telling a guy, fuck you, multiple times.
Yes.
And slapping Billy Crystal across the face. Like, I so appreciate watching now how much, like we've been talking about, how much When Harry Met Sally lets Sally be. Like how much of everything she gets to be, and how not dictated by the packaging of Meg Ryan, that those moments of sort of honest ferocity are from her. And I think that's really special when you go on to see, like, because You've Got Mail comes 10 years later, when there's a much like more concrete image of what Meg Ryan rom-com star looks like. And it's a classic in its own right. But it's interesting going from like the younger role with the sort of permission to have all of that sort of that anger in her at times versus more of like the mellowed out in Kathleen Kelly in 1998. And you're opposite Tom Hanks, and he's kind of the heel in this. He's kind of the cad.
Yeah, which is a great role for him because he's so... I mean, we haven't even talked about the whole concept of likability, which I hate as a concept, but it's very much on display.
Tell me about likability with Meg Ryan. Tell me about this. How do we learn this through her, and how do we see subversions of it through her?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in both these movies, you feel the studio note of, well, like, she can't be a slut, you know, and she can't, I mean, she says so many times When Harry Met Sally, like, how she's not sleeping with people. And there's really good reasoning on it, which I think is great. She's not gonna have casual sex, and because that's not for her. And it's done really well, but at the same time, she could never be the one of the two of them sleeping with all the people she's going out with. Of course, you have these actors who are all very likable.
Yeah.
They've got whatever it is for the time. They've got nice, attractive, palatable, straight whiteness happening for them.
They've got all the permissions. They've got all the privilege.
Yes, exactly. And she's operating within the acceptable feminine norms that we find likable, for lack of a good word at all to explain it. You know, the men get to behave a lot more badly in these movies. But I do think You've Got Mail is the worst offender on it again.
I completely agree, because a backbone of When Harry Met Sally is, like, at one point, like, he says something to her about, like, he says some sort of biting comment, and he's like, don't take it personally. She's like, it's personal because, like, I am a woman, and, like, you are an affront to all women. Like, she is making it clear that this guy is a cad. And
exactly
every 5 years or so, she re-encounters him until they start developing, like, a meaningful friendship, and is reminded over and over again, God, you are still a shit.
Yeah, and, you know, so I think that if you were to tell both Kathleen Kelly and Sally Albright, you're not like other girls, Kathleen Kelly would be like, I know. Like,
That's totally true.
And love it. And if you were to tell 12-year-old Allie that, she would be thrilled. And then, you know, I think Sally kind of realizes that's not a compliment that you really want to receive, that's actually just steeped in so much grossness. And so I think that's what it boils down to, is that Sally is not as concerned with being likable. And so, yes, you are operating within the Hollywood confines of likability, but you have this character that's kind of bossy and, you know, very opinionated, and is faking orgasms in the middle of a deli and not, you know what I mean? And that's supposed to be like a character growth moment for her, you know, uptight Sally before wouldn't do that, but it's still all subverting Harry's expectations. Everything she said from the very beginning is going against his notions that he's used to impress women, and she's like, I'm not impressed.
And she does it so.
You're gross.
The thing I enjoy most about the diner scene now is how unselfconsciously she makes that choice in the moment. Because even if it is counterintuitive to Miss Hospital Corners, she's not going to be talking about that the next day. It's going to be like, you're still hung up on that? Like, I made a choice in the moment. I did it. It's over. Like, grow up. Move on. There isn't, like, it's not like okay, I'm going to shirk my inhibitions and I'm going to go to the bathroom first and, like, you know, fix my clothes. Like, and she doesn't have to, like, collect herself after. He just gives her that look and she just keeps eating her pie.
Exactly.
And I like what a non-event it is for her to be so disruptive in a space like that.
I'll have what she's having.
Yes, because she's going to prove her point, you know? She's not going to lose an argument. And that's another thing that we're sort of... Kathleen Kelly, there's the whole scene where she's sick, which, oh my God, I thought it was so romantic. And then watching it again, I'm like, this woman asked this man to leave like 6 times, and he refuses, and it's not romantic. And he's like, I wanted to be your friend. And she's like, oh, okay. She asked you to go, Tom Hanks. Get out of there.
Why did you stop by again? I forget.
I wanted to be your friend.
Oh.
I knew it wasn't possible. What can I say? Sometimes a guy just wants the impossible.
Again, going back to, you know, Tom Hanks knows that Kathleen is shop girl the whole second half of the movie.
Yes.
And is just like putting in these machinations to make sure that she will accept him, even though he put her out of business because she's so in love with NY152, his screen name. And, she is just patiently being told how to feel. And whereas, Harry and Sally, it's a little more complicated than that. They both have agency in this relationship and what ends up happening.
Well, yeah, and it does a nice thing in the setup from when Harry Met Sally, where like the whole point of the two of these characters is that they are brutally honest with each other from the start.
Yes.
There's not a version of Harry that he is for Sally that he is to other people. There's not a version of Sally. There's no strings attached. They're just on this car ride from Chicago to New York. So they're just like, let's talk about life. And she's like, you're kind of a shit. And he's like, you're kind of uptight. And so that's like, they meet each other on at least those terms of neither of them like running a game on the other one. Whereas like by the time she's like, I wanted it to be you to Joe Fox, it's kind of like, wait, why'd you want it to be Joe Fox?
Right. It's because and it's only the last like 10 minutes of the movie that Joe and Kathleen in real life are developing this friendship. And that's what's like priming her. And that's the word that's used is
grooming,
priming her. Yeah. And to love him. And, so it's weird because it's a very romantic. I mean, look, I cry at the end of that movie every time.
Yeah, man.
And I'm being so critical, but I'm being really critical of myself.
Don't cry, shop girl. Don't cry.
And the dreams that you dare
I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be you so badly.
No, I'm completely with you. And a thing I wanted to ask, because an extension of that is like, when you started becoming the writer of stories, what were some like of the things you were most excited to do with your own creative work, like with character, perhaps with women or perhaps with male characters? Because you were like, I've been waiting for this thing, and I guess if I don't do it, like, I don't know when I'm going to see it. When did you want to use the power of being the creator in making your own characters, perhaps in their own love stories?
Yeah, I mean, I for me, it really clicked in when I was in grad school and I was encouraged to write more personal stories, because I kept being like, I just want to write broad comedies. You know, it doesn't have to be emotional, and of course, it does in order to be funny and in order to be good storytelling. And so I started writing, you know, R-rated rom-coms that were female-driven and kind of spoke to my experience dating in LA. And it had, at least in the first drafts, you know, just a lot of souped-up versions of the dates I was going on, the relationships I was in, the relationships my friends were in. And from there, I kind of went too hard in terms of my anti-likability crusade.
Got it, yeah.
I wrote one script where it was just like, everything this woman says is awful. You know, like one of those, like, everything is mean, and like everything about it is like uncomfortable and bitchy, and like, what are you going to do about it? And you know what they did about it? They didn't buy it. The collective did. No one made that movie.
There you go.
But that was like in the Bad Teacher, Bridesmaids era.
Totally.
So I was like, I just went too far with it. But then, you know, my first staff job was on Young and Hungry, which was a fantastic show on Freeform. And it's kind of like The Nanny, but instead of kids, it's food. She's a personal chef. And in the pilot, what I love in this pilot is that she goes to do her trial dinner for this young tech millionaire who is hiring a private chef. And this is her dream job. You know, she's waiting tables, and she knows she has a culinary voice. Like, Julia Child is her hero. Yeah. And she is like, I am a food mind reader. I can do this. And she makes a whole proposal dinner, and then the person being proposed to doesn't show up and breaks up with him, and he's super depressed. So then she's like, let's eat the dinner. And they wind up eating the dinner and drinking all the wine and sleeping together in the pilot. And it's this great thing of like, she's got it's Emily Osment, who's the most charming person on the planet.
Outstanding.
Outstanding. She's such a great actress. And she is good at her job, and she's perky and blonde, and she's super nice to everyone. And there's some people being mean to her, but she's still nice to them. You know, she's got all the likability stuff. And then she does this thing that it's like, you're not allowed to do that. Wait, what? Yeah. She gets drunk and has sex with this guy in the pilot, and then like ends up getting the job and going to work for him. And it's like, oh, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to have this messy thing. And it doesn't have to be like, well, she set his house on fire and like took a shit. Like, it doesn't have to be the worst person in the world to kind of test the limits on a protagonist and a woman protagonist that we'll root for. And so I really connected with that pilot. And I was so happy when I got that job, because I really felt like, oh, that's what I've kind of been missing in these spec features that I've been writing is maybe a little bit of the subtlety and the nuance there. You know, I was so excited that I was going to prove everybody wrong that kind of didn't really prove any point whatsoever. Whereas I think when you take something like that and say, hey, what if she sleeps with him in the pilot?
Yeah.
People can have so-called likable qualities while also being real and messy. And, you know, you want a protagonist you can root for. That doesn't mean they have to be the best person in the world, but maybe just like, don't make them someone that you wouldn't want to spend 90 minutes watching.
Yeah. You know, in the area of like, now you're in charge, and it's of something like targeted, I would imagine, like young adult, young consumer programming with iCarly. Like maybe you're bringing back those like younger millennials who grew up on that show, and maybe you're getting like new younger folks on top of that. What has been the challenge for you of working in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tough because you've got the little voice in the back of your head, like, you are ruining my childhood. You know, you don't want to, you got to protect Carly. You got to make sure that she's not doing something that doesn't feel true to the character. And that's a very nice, very loyal, very creative, you know, she doesn't have a lot of big flaws, which is, I think, why we've tried to dig into some of the dynamics that were already there from the original show, but I think are heightened with the addition of Harper, that like maybe Carly's a little too innocent. Maybe she's a little bit of a goody-goody. And I think especially in season 2, we were really able to get into that and have some fun with that. Or also Miranda can be kind of a good girl. So like we'll use real things from her life as well. And so, yeah, just kind of, and a lot of our writers too, just saying like, not necessarily massive character flaws, but like some color that contrasts her with the other characters, because we don't want to suddenly undo this smart, loyal, creative, kind character that people adore.
Gritty reboot of
iCarly. Exactly. I mean, you know, maybe we'll get there. I mean, in the last episode, it's all about female anger and, you know, how she's not allowed to express anger online, and that carries over into her real life. And trying to look at things to subvert the idea that the character, Miranda, all of it, that these people have to be likable, these characters and these actors have to be likable, and saying like, well, what does that look like? You know, we did an episode where she's in a fake relationship because her ex-boyfriends are mad at her. So she's like, oh, what's the only way I can get men to stop bothering me? Pretend I have a boyfriend.
100%. 100%.
We kind of get into some of those tropes that an influencer, content creator like Carly would have to deal with, but also that Miranda deals with in playing that character. So it's fun. We get to be a little bit meta with it.
And now, as we come toward the end of our time, a thing I'm wondering about then is, what do you feel like with the strides that we've made, like with representation on screen, like with what sort of women are allowed to be, likability, anger, sort of a broader breadth of representation? What do you feel like is like the subversion you're waiting for now? Like, what's the subversion that is kind of like on our doorstep at this moment in 2022? I'm stuck in like pre-pandemic time. I'm like, so before lockdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen some of this, but off the top of my head, I would say a happy non-romantic ending.
Yeah.
We've seen it in TV some, but then, you know, we know the next relationship is right around the corner. But I want to see, you know, a rom-com where like the big love story is the self, but it's not actually like secretly not funny, and not, you know, that there's a real thing where at the end and I know why that doesn't happen. It's not satisfying, but I bet somebody can crack it. I can't. But I would love to see, you know, a journey of self-love that's a real rom-com structure. Especially, I mean, when you're saying 2020 by accident, I mean, we all spent so much time by ourselves. We've had these personal growth solo journeys, so many of us, that let's see that. Let's see what that looks like, given as much joy and kind of romance as a typical romantic story.
The idea of like choosing oneself in that way being tantamount to the ways in which we have seen romantic conclusions play out for over and over and ever again forever. That would be really nice.
Yes, that this is a great, exciting choice if it's the right choice for you.
Yeah. Ali Schouten, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and for watching both the movies and coming in so well considered. I'm so glad we got to dig into the details of this because you were so ready for it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know how much I was bursting to talk about this stuff. Your insights were very inspiring and exciting.
Well, thank you for saying so, and thank you for sharing your time with us. And I'm ready to dive into New iCarly now.
Okay, good. Yeah. I guess by the time this airs, all 10 episodes of season 2 will probably be out. So get that Paramount Plus free trial, watch some iCarly. Let me know what you think.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Ali Schouten-Seeks. As we mentioned, season 2 of iCarly is streaming on Paramount Plus right now. Both When Harry Met Sally and You've Got Mail are streaming on Netflix and HBO Max. So go nuts, get all of the Meg Ryan you can handle. And you know what? Get out there and find the ones I mentioned too, like IQ and French Kiss. Like, those are downstream Meg Ryan movies that are every bit as good as her, like, iconic Hall of Fame hits. But for now, I've got one quick thing before I go. And as I promised, it is a massive vibe shift. The vibe shift is here, everybody, and it is this one quick thing before I go. In 2018, a movie came out, South Korean movie called The Witch Part 1, The Subversion, from writer and director Park Hoon-jung. And it is an excellent, like, girl escapes facility, goes off to live, life. She forgets her past. She lives in a nice little family and then realizes the true nature of her identity, which is she is a living weapon. And then all hell breaks loose. People gotta find her. This is a classic preternaturally strong, capable killer assassin girl story. Like Hannah, like Wolverine. This exists in that tradition, but make it South Korean. So add like an extra layer of awesome, basically. Well, that came out in 2018, and I don't know how franchising works in the South Korean film industry. I knew this was a part 1. I didn't know if that meant part 2 had already been shot. I didn't know if that meant we were getting a part 2, how many parts there were going to be. So for a couple of years, I was like, damn, like, we're going to get which part 2? Like, I love that movie. Is that ever going to come? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. It is here now. I only found out about this recently, that it was coming into existence, that it did exist. It is out now in theaters. Might not be the easiest thing to find in theaters. If you are in Los Angeles, it is playing at the CVG theater in Koreatown. So it could be a specialty cinema house. I'm just saying, like, if you go looking for it and you can't find it, keep your eyes open. Like, it should have a VOD release before too long. Like, I think the Witch Part 1, I think, premiered on Netflix. So keep your eye out. This should be widening over time. But The Witch Part 2, man, same writer, director. It's a separate story. It's The Witch Part 2, the other one. So it's like, okay, is this a companion character to our heroine girl from the first one? And the answer is yes, it is. So we open on, yet again, another girl leaving a facility surrounded by carnage. She's in a hall filled with bodies, blood, guts, everywhere. This little girl emerges looking like she's in a straitjacket that's been, like, cut undone, soaked in blood, walking out into the snowy day. We immediately become aware that she has powers, like her other one counterpart. She gets caught up in a very chaotic situation, ends up in a van with bad people. They do bad things. She fucks them up, crashes the van, and she is taken in by a nice young woman and her brother. Well, they, much like in The Subversion, they are not aware of the true nature of the girl that they have brought into their home, and there are even more forces determined to ensnare this girl, referred to only as the girl, and played by an actress who goes simply by Cynthia. Cynthia, doing an amazing job as a silent girl killer assassin character. This movie takes The Witch Part 1, The Subversion, but it plays by sequel rules in that we're going bigger, body count's going to be higher, powers are going to be like even more intense, like even more dialed up. There's going to be more blood. There's going to be higher concept. And this movie, the other one, fully turns into a superheroes at war story. This is the gritty superhero origin story horror movie that you need. I'm going to say you need, that maybe like, hey, I love all that Marvel stuff, but like, do I want a rated R ultra bloody answer to that? Yes. Do I love a sneaky superhero movie like this, like Thelma, famously Thelma from the Eskil Vogt episode? Yeah, so if you liked Thelma and you were like, I like gay, surprising superhero origin story muted drama tales, and you were like, I like surprising superhero story origin tales that are also bloody as shit and with really great violence, that is The Witch Part 2, the other one. And yes, it ends absolutely leading straight into a Part 3. So I was waiting with no certainty whatsoever for Part 2. I got it. I hope Part 3 has already been shot. I hope it already exists, because I'm ready for it right now. If this is a trilogy, bring on the conclusion. If this is the beginning of a franchise that's going to last 20 years, I want that too. So get out there, check out The Witch Part 1, The Subversion, so you can chase that The Witch Part 2, the other one. It's great stuff. I want to tell you about these cinematic gems when they are harder ones to find. And that's it, guys. That is what we talked about after talking about Meg Ryan. So we've covered it all today. That's our show. You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingScenePod, or send us an email at feelingscene@maximumfun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm JorCrew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned. Audience supported.